Okay, I appreciate all of you guys joining today. Thank you for taking the time. And it's going to be an interactive session. So you can kind of warm up your fingers because you'll be chatting a lot today. And it's good to have pen and pad so you can write down some of the things that appeal to you. Otherwise, we'll provide you good brief session notes at the end of the session today. Okay, so here is what we think we'll do. Somewhere between 30 to 45 minutes, we'll have the session. And then 10-minute, 15-minute question and answers. So it's not just question and answers, it's questions and application also. So I'll be asking you, how would you apply this later? No, the session notes, recorded session is not available. Okay, so 30 to 45 minutes for the session, 10 minutes plus for question and answer, and more importantly, question and application. So I'll be asking you, how would you apply what you have learned and so on and so forth. And finally, we'll have a 5-minute break so you can return important phone calls or take a bio break, etc. So are you guys ready? If you are ready, can you warm up and type yes in your chat so I can see you are awake in the lovely post-lunch afternoon session? I see a few yeses. Yeah, great. Thank you so much. And we'll be monitoring the chat all the time. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Otherwise, this is the format that we'll follow. Okay, great. So the first part of the outline is key factors that impact business outcomes. So what, in your opinion, are the top 5 factors for business success? So I know there are many factors that help any business succeed, but what, in your opinion, would be top 5? Would you care to share via chat, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5? What helps business success? Okay, clear strategy, that's absolutely important. What else? Anything else? Great. Integrity, authenticity, leadership. Yeah, and the prize goes to Neha because you are in the leadership session. So if you don't mention that, I'll be really unhappy. People. Yes, Pawan, that's correct. People, right, right. Leadership. Okay, great. So strategic focus, yeah, Sarabji. Leadership behaviors, fantastic. Okay, good. So I think I agree with all of you guys. And what happens is that leadership behaviors obviously is important. But see, business results depend on lots of factors, yeah? And what do we mean by business success? One is top line growth, bottom line growth, and sustainability. So what impacts that? Well, it could be a brilliant strategy. It could be, your business location, an innovative product, superb execution, maybe being in the right place at the right time. After COVID, certain industries benefited, or just plain old luck. However, one factor that is absolutely consistent and predictable, one factor is absolutely consistent and predictable in its impact on success of every kind of business in all kinds of locations, in all kinds of industry. And that is the quality of leadership inside the organization. Yeah. So that's what our premise is today. So here is a quick study and a survey from Korn Ferry Hay Group. And this was done in 2014, but I think it still applies. And here is what they say, what factors account for a company's bottom line. So bottom line is net profit. So here are the 5 things that they mentioned that account for 65% of the profit. So strong franchises. So can you guys think of an example of a strong franchise? Any company that you think has a strong franchise brand name? Anyone cares to type their answers? Yeah, Starbucks. You won't go to the next coffee shop even if they charged you half. Yeah, McDonald's is one. Absolutely. So that's the brand value. Domino's. So Apple, Coca-Cola, even if the guy next door sells something cheaper, so that's something that adds to your bottom line. Munificent is a word that means beneficial environment. Can you think of a beneficial environment company who has benefited from beneficial environment, or a location, position, anything like that? Okay. So say for example, there is Silicon Valley, yeah, or Bangalore in India or Pune in India. So there a lot of factors have confluenced to help certain kinds of business success. Yeah. And obviously things are changing with worldwide connectivity. Then there is intellectual property. So usually pharma companies, IT companies, maybe a Qualcomm or any of the large pharma companies, it helps their business. Regulatory barriers. So can you give an example of a company who has benefited from regulatory barriers? Maybe in our country, another country, in United States, wherever. Any thoughts on that? So some of the examples are, yeah, artificial barrier, reliance. Artificial barriers to entry. So one example I use sometimes is, I believe Dia, you are from Middle East, and the calling and internet prices are extremely high, probably 10 times of what they are in India. And why? Because there are artificial barriers to entry. And finally, massive resources. Anyone can give an example of a company? Yes, insurance, IRDA. Massive resources. Some companies have such massive resources in terms of people, in terms of plants, that it's very difficult to match. Any companies come to mind with massive resources? So probably Procter and Gamble or Google or Infosys. Yeah, they have built this. TCS, Microsoft, absolutely. All of these companies. Yeah. So thank you guys for actively participating. So all of these factors account, and this is what Korn Ferry Hay Group says. Yeah, Verizon and British Telecom are some. Okay. So 65% of the profits or bottom line of company is due to these factors. So then the question remains is, which is the other 35%? And the other 35%, and no points for guessing, it's the leadership behaviors and the culture it creates. Now think about this. All of these factors combined are 65%, and leadership by itself, leadership behaviors and the culture by itself is 35%. Isn't that amazing? So here's a good old Peter Drucker quote, which says, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And as you may have noticed, although it is one of the most important factor, it is often overlooked, people and culture. A lot of focus is on strategy and business outcomes. Why? Because strategy is cool and sexy. Think about any B-school program. How much do they talk about strategy and execution and IT and whatnot? But changing culture, it's not easy. It's hard and it's messy. But if you kind of ignore the culture, it's at your own peril. They say that culture will eat your strategy for breakfast, but that's not it. Culture will eat employee motivation for lunch, and culture may even eat change and innovation for dinner. So culture is something that we have to account for. And any planning meeting, if you see, I would bet on it that very few people discuss culture or behavior change, even managers, all the way to the strategic leadership team when implementing any large initiative. Okay, so the next point. So here's a good way to look at it. Leadership behaviors drive the organizational culture, and organizational culture drives the organization's performance. So that's the link between leadership behaviors and performance. So now we are going to go to the next slide, And here's a question that I want to ask you, and you can use your chat box. Have you worked under a good leader sometime during your career? Have you worked under a good leader? Yes, no? And have you worked under a, let's just call them not so good leader? Obviously not in your current company, right? Your current boss is great. Maybe he or she is watching, but maybe in previous companies, have you worked for yes to both? Okay, Seva, right. So anecdotally, from your own experience, what do you think? Who gets more work done from you, the good leader or the bad leader? Yeah, the good leader. Yeah, true. And what happens when you work under a bad leader? To your stress, your engagement, your contribution to the company, whether you're polishing your resume and looking for other jobs or not. No one. Yeah. So anecdotally, we kind of know that under bad leader, these kinds of things happen. So here what we want to look at is that, is there any research or study that helps you establish the link between leadership and business success? Yeah. So that's what we are going to take a look at it. Okay. So here is a large scale study by leadership experts and researchers, Zenger Folkman. Have you heard of Zenger Folkman? I think many people in HR would have heard of them. You can always type yes if you've heard of them. So they conducted a large study on a division of Fortune 500 mortgage lending organization. So what was unique about this company was that they had 100 branch locations in cities across North America. So Canada, United States, Mexico, and so on and so forth. And each branch had 25 to 35 employees, and there was a branch head, which was, we can call him or her a leader. So now because they are working for the same company, the policies, the procedures, the interest rates, the culture, it's more or less uniform across the branches, yeah, right? So you're working for the same company, the salary, most of the things are more or less equal or equivalent. Yeah. So going further, branch-wise profitability metrics were easily available. So in this case, we were kind of lucky, and I'll discuss that later, that it was kind of easy to identify leadership behaviors and profits directly. So how did they decide that whether the leaders were good, not so good? So they did the 360-degree feedback. So are you aware of 360-degree feedbacks? Have you used it in your organization? You can type yes. Yeah. So yeah, very rarely there would be an organization who doesn't use, who believes in leadership or development. Yeah. So Zenger and Folkman measured the 360-degree for each of these 100 branch leaders, and they arbitrarily divided those into top 10%, bottom 10%, and middle 80%. So you are taking the leaders based on what? The perception of their team members. What do their team members say? 360-degree is anonymous feedback of the leader's boss, subordinates, and obviously peers, and sometimes even customers and vendors. So here, what they are measuring is that which of the leaders were rated top 10% based on their 360-degree feedback scores, which one were rated in the bottom 10%, and the rest of them in the middle 80%. So what do you guess, guys? What is your guess? What would be the performance based on these three groups? Any thoughts on that? Do you think the bottom 10% would perform the best? Top 10% would perform the best? What are your thoughts? Yeah. So the middle 80% would be the best. Okay. Interesting. Right. So let me kind of middle 80% would be the best. Okay, the performance. I guess you guys are thinking about aggregate performance, not individual performance. Yeah. So if you talk about individual performance, probably top 10% might be the correct guess, right? So usually top performer would perform better. Okay, let's see Zenger Folkman's result. Yeah. So here is how it looks. Here is the bottom 10%, which I have highlighted with a red box. So bottom 10% of the leaders, and on the y-axis, it's the profit in millions of dollars. So bottom 10% of the leaders are quote unquote poor leaders, and they end up with a loss of $1.2 million for their branch on an average, yeah, the bottom 10%. Okay, all right. And as you see, the middle 80%, they are what we can call average or good leaders, and they have a net profit per branch of $2.4 million. But what is really interesting is this third box. So if you take the top 10% of the leaders, their profit per branch was $4.5 million. So which is double of the average of the rest of 90%, right? So if you average the other 90%, they are still making you double the money. So does that seem interesting? You can always share your thoughts via chat box. And one of the issues with companies is that they think that we have good leaders, yeah? Well, good is a problem because you may have heard of this quote saying that good is the enemy of great. So we are happy with good leaders because in 360, if the leader rates better than the average in your company, we think, oh, I am a good leader. But there's a problem there. Good leaders have average performance, but if you make those good leaders into great leaders, then the performance doubles from average. Yeah. So, and obviously during our question and answer and application session, we will discuss more. So here is the picture of a smoking gun. Anyone knows what a smoking gun is? A smoking gun? So we may have seen the detective series, on television or Netflix, where the detectives have to, one that has just been fired, absolutely. So, in the detective TV series, the detectives have to collect the evidence to be able to prosecute the bad guys. Yeah, they should have enough evidence. And when they get a smoking gun, which means that the gun has been fired, the smoke is still coming out of there, and then the victim is shot right in front of them. So when you have that kind of an evidence, it's smoking gun. But as you know from the detective series, a smoking gun is rare, right? If they had smoking gun, the episode would be over in 5 minutes. And in real life also, you rarely find a smoking gun. What you have to do is collect what is known as circumstantial evidence. And usually, if there is good enough circumstantial evidence, then you have enough evidence to prosecute the criminal. Does it make sense? Yeah. So most of the times detectives have to rely on circumstantial evidence. Now, measuring the impact of leadership on bottom line is also similar. So once in a while, as we had with Zenger Folkman's study of the financial company, the 100 branch leaders, we can get a smoking gun. But most of the times, the link between leadership behaviors, leadership quality, and profits, it's circumstantial. So we have to establish the link. So how can we establish a good enough case to convict based on circumstantial evidence? So that's what we are going to try today. Okay. All right. So here is a question for you, and I'm going to launch a small poll. It's a simple yes/no poll. So what it says is, does employee satisfaction and commitment impact business results? And by business results, we mean three things, yeah? So growth in top line, growth in bottom line, and sustainability, yeah? Okay. Anyone else wants to vote. So still some more time. Okay. All right. And I'm going to end the poll and share the results with you. So obviously we have unanimous results, and it says that 100% of the times, 100% agreement with the fact that employee satisfaction and commitment impacts business results. So here is the data from 30,661 global leaders, so more than 30,000, and it compares the scores for the top 10% versus the bottom 10%. And what is the y-axis here? It is employee satisfaction and commitment percentile. You know, what percentile of employees are satisfied and committed. And what is the y-axis here? What we saw before. You know, what is the leadership effectiveness of that particular leader? Yeah. So as you can see, if we take a look at it closely, the bottom 10% of the leaders have a engagement score. What percentage of people under those leaders are engaged? Somewhere around 22, 23, as you can see. And when we look at the top 10th percentile, you know, the top 10% of the leader, 90th to 100th percentile, 80% of the employees are satisfied and committed. So here is that circumstantial evidence. Leadership impacts employee satisfaction, which you all agree, and that impacts business results or profitability. So that's the first circumstantial evidence. So here's the next one, and I'm going to launch another quick poll. Does employee turnover impact business results? If you lose an employee, would that impact business results? In fact, a lot of times the cost of replacing one employee ranges from half of the annual CTC, the salary of the company, to 2.5 times the annual cost to the company. You know, depends on the complexity of the job, depends on the, you know, if you need a certain kind of a programmer, or if you need a chemical engineer who specializes in certain things, then it takes even longer, and the loss of productivity in between, etc., is there. So I'll give you another few seconds to vote. Does employee turnover impact business results? Okay. All right, so I'm going to end the polling and I'll share the results. Okay, so here also we are agreeing unanimously, and the answer is yes. Yeah. So, and Dia and Aparna, I'm going to note down the questions. We are noting that down, so we'll kind of address them together. It depends on the employee, but what we measured in the previous slide was percentile of employees who are happy or unhappy. So some are happy, some are unhappy, but you can see the striking difference between 23 and 80. Yeah. Okay. All right. Does employee turnover impact business results? Okay, so that's the one we looked at. Now, here is the next one. So how many, and this is similar to the previous question to turnover. So here is 2,500 leader in a stock brokerage company. You know, you can think of JP Morgan or those kinds of company. And so here, the percentage of employees that think about quitting under the bottom 10% of the leaders, and the percentage of employees that think about quitting under the top 10% of the leaders. So here again, it's the flip of the other one. So here it is 82, 83%. And here it's maybe 3%, 4%. So employee retention. So this thing you can think in terms of good leaders retain employees, engage employees, and they keep them. So that could be the conclusion from this one. So this one's obvious, and I'll still ask you to answer this poll. Do you think sales growth impacts business performance? What do you think? If there are higher sales, would that impact? And this is kind of a duh kind of a question, right? Most of the times, obviously you also have margins, but most of the times higher sales means higher profits. Yeah. So good. Okay. Obviously, yeah. Okay. So let's end the polling and share the results. Yeah. Yeah. So one person says no, and I kind of agree partially. So there is a profit margin. So sales at the cost of profit doesn't matter. But in general, higher sales would result in higher. Yeah. So let's see, what does leadership behaviors do to sales? So here are 95 large big box store managers in Mexico in 2014. And at that point of time, the economy and political situation was really bad, and every sector of the economy was impacted. So what did the leaders do for that year in sales growth? So what we see here on y-axis is percentage growth in sales year over year. And the bottom 10% grew the sales by 0.7%, barely beating the inflation. And top 10% of the leaders grew the sales by 7.4%. Yeah. So that's usually, you can say 10 times, but even in a bad economy, good leaders make a difference. Okay, we'll go to the next one. And this is just the same question from another company, another study. So does having a high percentage of committed employees, does employee commitment impact business results? So we have launched a poll. Employee commitment, does it impact business results? So here's another related question. Lots of employee engagement surveys come out every year, yeah? So what percentage of the employees worldwide are engaged and committed? Any guesses? You can share your thoughts in chat. What percentage of worldwide employees are committed? Any thoughts? 20%. Yeah, 40%. Yeah, Pankaj. 20 to 30%. Yeah, that sounds about right. 20%, correct? Less than 5%. What company do you work for, Siva? Okay, 25 to 30. Yeah, that's right. So we know kind of intuitively that having a highly committed employees impacts business results. So what does leadership do to commitment? So here again is results from a large global pharma company. And what is the result? So here on the left-hand side, the bottom 10 percentile, 21% of the employees said that they were highly committed. And with the top 10% of the leader, the number goes to 77%. Yeah. So here is the global average that you mentioned, how many committed or engaged employees is. But when you have a top leader, so think about this. Any employee has two choices: put forth a minimum effort, just enough so that we don't get fired, or we can be engaged and put in a lot of effort and work on high priority projects and what is beneficial to the organization. So that is what is called discretionary effort. Yeah. So discretionary effort is variable, and it's highly variable. And let me give you an example. Do you recall the last day at work before you went on vacation? Do you recall the last day at work before, let's say, you went on a 1 week vacation or a business trip? And here's the question. Were you more productive on that last day or less productive? Can you type your answers? The last day at work when you were going for a week-long vacation. Much more, right? And by how much more? Sometimes it's probably double. You work on the highest priority, you work with complete focus, you avoid all distractions. So that is the power of discretionary effort. So whether your people would put in the extra discretionary effort depends on leadership quality, as we see here in this slide. Yeah, green. And does employee satisfaction with their pay, does that impact business result? What do you think? And I'm going to launch the poll in a second. So are your employees happy with what you pay them? Would that impact business results? So do they think they're paid enough? Would that impact? No? Okay, good. Okay, all right. True, yeah, that's right. Pay is a hygiene factor. It's not intrinsic motivator. Thank you, Pawan. Okay, so here we have a slight divergence. Most of the rest of the true. They need to have enough to take care. Absolutely right, especially in these kinds of times. So I'm going to end poll and share the results. And here, as I said, we have some divergence. So that's fine. That's absolutely fine. So what I wanted to show you is this. So this is another large multinational organization, and this is the same organization. So under bottom 10% of the leader, about, let's just call this 37% of the employees said that they were happy with what they got paid. And with the top 10%, it was, let's call this 59%. Yeah. So now this is the funny part. This is the exact same company with the same pay scale, same processes, same salary. So there's no difference. What is the difference? It's the perception of working under a good leader or not so good leader. So essentially what people are saying is that you can't pay me enough to work under that jerk, so I'm not happy with my pay. If you want me to work under that jerk, you need to increase my pay. So that's what basically they are saying. So leadership impacts the perception of satisfaction with the pay also. Yeah. So that's what this, yeah, Sajan, you seem to like this one, right? You can't pay me enough to work with that jerk. Yeah. So bad leadership have a detrimental impact. So how does it work? So take a look at this slide. What happens with good leadership is, internal service quality. So people say customers first, but these days employees is first. And when employees are satisfied, it leads to the second, which is putting in discretionary effort, wanting to stay with the company, increased productivity, serving customers, and then obviously better customer satisfaction, better loyalty, revenue growth, and profitability. So this is how basically we have kind of enough circumstantial evidence that leadership impacts bottom line. Yeah. Okay. So what is the conclusion? So conclusion is, in Zenger Folkman's case, the large financial company, good leaders, or sorry, the extraordinary leaders doubled the profits of the good leaders. Yeah, the average leaders. So do you think that this is always possible that the good leaders will double profit? Obviously, the answer is no, right? That may depend on so many things. Yeah, how's the competition, how's the economy, what company, what country, what industry, and so on and so forth. But one thing is for sure, you can take your organization or any organization and the trend line would look exactly like this. Yeah. So it would slope upwards from bottom 10% of the leaders to top 10% of the leaders. And that is almost always confirmed. You can do it in your organization, and I'm willing to bet $1 that we will have this exact trend line. Yeah. So it's not necessary that good leaders may double the profit, but this trend line always happens. And believe it or not, it's one of the few sustainable competitive advantages for any company. So what gives you results? Think about this. Which company attracts, retains, engages and utilizes highly talented employees, they will have a competitive advantage in any industry, in any economy. Do you agree? The company that attracts, retains, engages and utilizes highly talented employees will have a clear competitive advantage. So what do you guys think? Do you agree with that statement? You can type in yes. And that clearly, as we have seen, depends on what? Whether the employees are engaged or not. What does that depend on? Anyone? The quality of leadership within the organization. Yeah. So that's fantastic. Yeah. Great. Thanks. So moving on, here is the graph. You know, what is the blue line? It's called the bell curve. If we are in human resources, we know the bell curve very well. And what is the orange line? We are trying to move the bell curve to the right. Yeah. So you guys aware of the bell curve and moving it to the right? So what we are doing is, don't be happy with average leaders, just like we saw in the Zenger-Folkman study. Move your average or good leaders to become extraordinary, So bring them into the top 15 or 20%, and it'll easily add a good chunk of bottom line. How much can it add? So here is a question for you. In your organization, what is the people cost as a percentage of revenue? So how much is the salary and benefits of people compared to the revenue? And you might not have the exact figure, but give me a guess. So let's say if my revenue is 10 million and if I pay 3 million in salary, then it's 30%. Any thoughts? Right, absolutely. So in highly technology-oriented companies, it's always there. So Pawan says majority. Okay, so NGO, so no cost, volunteers. That's right. Okay, Sajan, got it. Any? Yeah, so 70%. Yeah, so retail and a lot of other such organization, highly technical organization. Right. Okay, great. So do you guys agree that people costs are a significant cost? Yes or no? Yeah. So here's what happens, and take a look at this next slide very carefully. So on the x-axis, we have percentage increase in pre-tax profit, and on the left-hand side, what is the people cost as a percentage? So I'm going to take the first thing here. So let's say if the people costs are 20%, and if you improve the productivity by 5%, yeah, so then you will have a 20% increase in your profits. Did you guys get it? Type yes if you did. I'll cover it again, no? So if people costs are 20%, and if you improve the productivity of your people by 5%, then your profits will go up by 20%. And just take a look at the 50%. If you are at 50% cost, people costs, and if you improve your productivity by 10%, then the pre-tax profit can be doubled, So that's where Zenger-Folkman says double profit. So now the question is this just mathematical juggling, or is it really possible to increase productivity of your employees by 10%? Can you guys tell me, can we increase the productivity of your employees by 10%? Yes or no? What do you think? Is it realistic? Increasing the productivity of your employees by 10%, is it realistic? What do you think? Depends on the sector. Okay, obviously. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Anyone else cares to share? Okay, no worries. So we'll move on to the next slide. And so here are three separate studies. The first one on the right, where my cursor is, research by Gallup. You guys already told me 20% of the employees are engaged. 55% are not engaged. Yeah. So do you think you can engage 10% of these people? Would that make a difference? Yeah. And then there is this middle research. In medium complexity job, the top 1% is 85% more productive. And in high complexity job, the top 1% of the employees are 127% more productive. Does it make sense? So if you move the middle to the right, and here is a research from Zenger-Folkman, and this is from 350,000 different 360-degree feedbacks and assessments, 20%, 37%, and 43%. So now my question is this, do you think we can move the middle? If so many people are disengaged, can we engage more of them? And is there a possibility of moving the middle to the right? You can type yes or no. What do you guys think? Is it realistic or possible to move the middle and increase the profitability by 10%, productivity by 10%? Yeah, okay, Pavan thinks yes. Okay, Siva, must attempt. Yeah. Siva, I agree with you. Must attempt is because, believe it or not, investment in good leadership development has better ROI than investment in technology upgrades, capital investments, or investment in any other kind of business activity. So it is said that leadership is most talked about, most observed phenomenon, but least understood. Yeah. So people talk about leadership all the time, but we don't really understand what it means and how it goes. Yeah. So here's another study from Harvard. Good leaders develop 2.5 times more leaders under them. So let's say person A is a good leader, then there will be 2 or 3 good leaders under him or her. And person B is not a good leader, and you won't find any good leader under them. So leaders cast a long shadow, you know. Leaders role models the behavior, and it creates and percolates and cascades the culture down. So believe it or not, when you develop one leader, it has a multiplier and cascading impact down the line also. And here's the flip side. A DDI study estimated that the cost of a single bad leader to the organization is $126,000 per year. Single bad leader, $126,000 per year. And so what do you think of that? Do you think that's true, false? And by the way, in your workbook, we have this. So I'm going to give you a minute to take a look at this slide and think about how engagement impacts the individual, the manager, the customer, and the organization. And then I think we are done for this section. So we will have question and answer session. So take a minute to look at this slide, and it's already in your PDF that you will be getting after the session. Okay, so here we have 2 things, question and answer and question and action. So first it's your turn, you can ask me questions, and then I'm going to ask you what we saw, what we kind of covered. Is there any applicability in your organization? So any questions? Oh, I have to unmute everyone.
Tushar, I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
This is Manjri here.
Yeah, Manjri.
Do you have any practical ways of having that bell curve turned to the right?
Right. So we, on our website, we have a case study of 32 leaders in FMCG company that we helped move 32 leaders, and how much did they move or grow. But we did not measure the ROI or the profitability. We measured the 360 and the behavior change. Does it make sense?
So my question was more about, given that you have experience talking to so many leaders across, and you have been coaching here,
Hmm.
if we get some real-time practical ways of making this difference,
Yeah.
that would really help.
Yeah, in fact, I'm going to give you the, we use Dr. Marshall Goldsmith's stakeholder-centered approach. So it's also in your PDF, and I'm going to cover it a little later today in the third hour, where you can follow this exact process, and you don't need us. You can start doing it yourself also. But
Sure.
it's kind of like a personal trainer, no? So personal trainer can show you all the exercises in a day or two. But does that mean that you will lose the weight? Well, if you have a personal trainer on your side, it helps. So we could be that personal trainers if you wanted to go further. But we will today show you all the exercise you can do to develop your leadership.
Tushar, can I?
Yeah, please.
Hi. So Tushar, a thought that comes to me is in response to your earlier question about whether we have worked with a good leader or a bad leader. And my sense is that it's more likely we've worked with an exemplary leader with some absolutely improper attributes. You know, what I see in my work experiences is that the leaders are exemplary. Some of the leaders I've worked with are exemplary. So easy. They kind of inspire with their behavior. They're very knowledgeable. They share information freely, and they pretty much work with integrity. But at the same time, there are some attributes that they have which are absolutely kind of difficult to put up with. So oftentimes, I feel it's not necessarily a question of a bad leader or a good leader. It's often these two behaviors coexisting in the same leaders.
Yeah, very true. So it's like asking that, is there any perfect leader? And obviously no. So we do have our strengths, and we do have our what we call fatal flaws or improvement areas. And what Zenger-Folkman's research has shown is that just moving from, so let's say you have 15 competencies and you move a leader from being good, and by good means in top 10 or 20th percentile of all raters, So if you have only 2 strengths in top 20%, and if you add a third one, then if you have 15 competency, the increase should be 1/15th, but that's not the case. So leaders only need somewhere between 3 to 5 exemplary strengths to be good leaders. And at the same time, what you said, a bottleneck behavior or what we call fatal flaw. So how do you know someone has a fatal flaw? So let's say you just talk about a leader. So how's Tushar? So Tushar talks too much. He never listens to anyone. So that's the first thing that comes to mind. So let me give you another example. Bill Clinton, what comes to mind? So many things he has done, but only one thing comes to mind. So that is a fatal flaw. So what leadership development is overcoming the fatal flaws if a leader has one. And usually about 20 to 30% leaders have fatal flaws, sometimes more depending on the organization and the culture and the country, etc. But most of the times it's the average leaders that kill you, So you are happy with average leaders and you think we are doing great because we are above average. But if you move them to the top by developing 1 or 2 more strengths, and then the business results, the engagement then goes much higher. I'm hoping that answers the question. Yeah, I think these are all very important. No, if you don't have psychological safety, then especially in highly creative, non-routine, uncertain jobs, it's extremely important. And empathy, greater good. I think I would add learning agility, one thing, and some of those things. So it's good to use a tool that is kind of comprehensive. And there are many good tools available to assess leaders against a set of competencies. So you are measuring most of the things that matter. But now what happens is that what human resources tries to do is try to develop a Superman. So think about your last 360-degree feedback. What happened? So it's like what happens in our school. I bring my grades home and my dad tells me that you got 1A, 3 Bs and 1 C. So which one is he going to talk about first, the A or the C? So you already experienced that with your 360 or maybe your grades at home, that they start talking about C. So you are trying to improve on C instead of leveraging your strengths. Yeah. So that is one of the issues with 360. And other is, which are the 2 or 3 critical competencies that everyone in your organization should have? So let's say if we take Google, what is their critical competency? Can you type in the chat? And let's say Starbucks, what is their critical competency? Or let's say Walmart or Big Bazaar, what is their critical competency? Amazon, what is critical for them? Any thoughts on that? So customer orientation, yeah, absolutely. Innovation and speed for Google, customer orientation for Starbucks. So then why are you asking your people instead of leveraging strengths to make something else better that might not even matter? Yeah. So that is one of the issues with leadership development is, are you leveraging strengths or are you overcoming weaknesses? You have to overcome weaknesses in situations where it's a fatal flaw, where when you talk about the leader, only thing that comes to mind is he gets angry all the time. She never stops talking. In that case, you have to work on the fatal flaw. Otherwise, you leverage strengths. But that's not what happens in organizations. Yeah. Your boss will tell you that you are good on this 6 competencies, but you are low on this 3. So on next performance review, you should increase your score on these competencies, and we are happy with that. And that's not the right way. Yeah. Sarabjit, I'm sorry I missed your question earlier. Yeah, 360 is the best tool actually. And I'll tell you why. So we have performance measures, right? So let's say before COVID, in your organization, if you had performance measures, and after COVID, what happened to that performance measures? It depends on the type of industry you were. If you were in hospitality or travel, business went down like crazy. If you were in IT enabler, then the business shot up like crazy. So there are so many factors that impact performance that it is not in 100% control of the leader. And it's very difficult to measure. Yeah. Can you isolate that just because this leader improved, that's why the performance of this team or this leader increased? And that's practically impossible because there are dozens, if not more, factors impacting business. How was the economy? Where was the pandemic? And on and on and on. But one thing that is under 100% control of the leader is, guess what? Leader's own behavior. And that's what the perception creates of 360. So in the long term, 360, Warren Buffett says that in the short term, stock market is a popularity machine, but in the long term, it's a weighing machine. So it will tell you the real weight. So the same way, performance is short term, but 360 and that is long term and sustainable. And it's a good circumstantial evidence for smoking gun, which is very difficult to find. Any other questions? I'll take a last one and then we'll have a 5-minute break if that's okay. Okay, any questions? No? So we'll take a 5-minute break, and in Indian Standard Time at 4:05, we'll start again. Yeah, is that okay, guys? Type yes. If you're awake and if you're okay with this, please type yes. Okay. Thank you. So we'll meet exactly at 4:05. Yeah. Thanks, guys. So hopefully you guys are back. In the meantime, I'll ask you this question, turn knowledge into action. So anyone cares to share what we have learned so far? Anything you can apply? Anything that So is everyone back? If you are back, you can type in yes. We'll start in about a minute. In the meantime, here is a question to ponder. Thank you for the thumbs up. Any thoughts on Aparna says culture eats strategy for breakfast? True. Culture should get the focus it deserves. Okay. Anything else? Anyone else? Okay, Venkata is back. Great. Yeah, makes sense, Shivanti. Develop the competencies that matter, because to be in the top 10 or 20th percentile of the leader, you only need 3 to 5 strengths. You don't need all 15 competencies to be great. Sajjan, the question was, how can you turn the knowledge, what you have learned, into action and apply it your own? Yeah. Fatal flaw, yeah. And good leaders sometimes have fatal flaw, and that's what we need to work on. Good. Any other thoughts? So is everyone back? I would like to keep our time so that we can keep on moving. Okay, interesting. So, you know, you can ask people what's your fatal flaw, but I don't think you'll get your answer. Sometimes it's a blind spot, sometimes it's lack of awareness, and sometimes it's lack of acceptance. Yeah, I talk a lot and I treat people like dirt because they are jerks. You know, no one's as smart as me. So lack of awareness or lack of acceptance. Yeah, Neha, 3 to 5 competencies and the 360 degree. Great. So I have to give you guys kudos. You guys are paying a lot more attention than I thought that you guys were paying. So thumbs up from me to you guys. Yes, Sarabjit, power of discretionary effort. And that's the funny thing. Yeah, you cannot pay for discretionary effort. You cannot command it. You can only inspire it. That's the bad thing or the good thing about discretionary effort. You can only inspire it. And guess what? How can you inspire it? By leadership behaviors. Yeah. Focusing on and leveraging strengths. Fantastic. So should we move on? Yeah, with your kind permission. Great. Okay. All right. So how do you measure the effectiveness of a leader or a leadership development initiatives? Yeah, 2 parts. How do you know if the leader is effective? And how do you know if your leadership development program or initiatives are effective? So 2 separate questions. So the first one is, here's a question about how do you improve the quality of a service or product that your company has? So just share your thoughts. Like, you know, all companies have either a product or a service. And do you work on improving the quality of that product or service? Yes or no? And if yes, seek feedback from clients. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Yeah, get design thinking. Yeah, that's a new way to do it. Survey. Absolutely. Correct. So I believe you guys are on the right track. What I was kind of leading into is, how do you improve any product or service? So step 1 is gather feedback. Step 2 is analyze and prioritize feedback. You know, not everything people say you have to do. And then decide and take action. And finally, follow up with the customers. So if you do this, are you done, or is it an endless loop? What do you think? Once and done, or you continuously do this? It's endless loop, absolutely. So yeah. So this is what is the really interesting part, that we kind of intuitively, we know this in any product or service improvement. And then we kind of don't think about that in the leadership. So again, the Zenger-Folkman's analysis of 56,000 leaders and 750,000 360-degree instruments from hundreds of companies worldwide. So startups all the way to Fortune 500 and on 5 continents. And what they did was they measured the performance metrics on the same leaders, yeah, to compare, what happens. Remember the financial company, top 10%, bottom 10%, but then they compared with the branch results. So same thing that they did with a much larger study, 56,000 leaders, compare the leadership effectiveness and compare the business results. And what was their conclusion? If you want to gauge the effectiveness of a leader, ask the leader's team members. So now you just told me in the previous slide, if you want to improve your product or service, ask the customers. So why are we surprised here, right? But how many of us actually do it? And let's be honest, when was the last time you asked, one of your subordinates or peers, what can I do to become a better leader? Formally, informally. So we hardly ever ask these kinds of questions on a routine basis or even in 360. So the best way to measure the effectiveness or the impact of a leader is through 360-degree feedback. And why? Because when you get into a leadership position, the technical skills account for very little and behavior skills account for more. And you are not doing anything yourself. The time you are head of the department, let's say you are head of finance, you are not doing spreadsheets, you are not doing ERP. All you are doing is inspiring other people to do their work. And that's why what they think of you matters a whole lot. Yeah. Okay. And because the customers of leadership are your team members, subordinates, peers, boss, vendors, customers, etc. So they are the ones who are in the best position. Manjari, you asked this question a little bit earlier, but I'm hoping that this answers your question, that how do you measure the effectiveness of a leader? Yeah. Okay. All right. So then the next part is, how do you measure the effectiveness of any leadership development initiatives? So I'll ask you this question. So you have done leadership development programs. Do you measure something after the program? Yes or no? And if yes, what do you measure? So maybe you heard of Kirkpatrick. So yeah, so how do you normally measure the effectiveness of any program, training program, learning program, leadership program? Okay, so surveys, right? So survey is the level 1 effectiveness, whether they like the program or not, correct? And what's the level 2 effectiveness on Kirkpatrick scales? So whether they learned something or not. So if I, attend a program on Microsoft Excel, then there will be a set of questions that will test whether I learned something. Yeah. Okay, team climate survey. Okay, that's one way to do it. Commitments by participants via learning journal. Yeah, that's also fantastic. Correct. But these are kind of scattered approaches, right? So what did they learn? What did they journal? And how did particular improvement impact the team climate? So those are a little bit distanced from what actually happens. Okay, monthly pulse surveys for the team. Yeah, pulse surveys are excellent way to do that. Yeah, correct. So what I'm leading into is that the best measure of any leadership or training intervention is changed behavior at work. So remember I asked you earlier, how will you apply? So if you don't apply anything, then today's program would be a waste, right? Because you might as well be watching, the latest movie on Netflix, whether it's Radhe or whether it's something from Hollywood. Yeah, but if you don't apply, then it doesn't make any difference. So leadership is mostly behavioral. everything in leadership is behavioral except for strategic thinking, So all other leadership competencies are behavioral. And if you don't change your behavior at work, then it doesn't make any sense. And how do you measure behavior at work? And who should decide that the behavior has changed or no? Is it the training facilitator? Is it the leader himself or herself? Who should decide if the leader's behavior has changed or no? Any thoughts? Who is in the position to tell whether the leader's behavior has changed or not? Obviously, we have 100% agreement on that, right? If I myself tell that, hey, I am a great leader now because I attended this program or I took this course, doesn't mean anything. It's like saying that my product has improved because I say so, not because my customers say so. Yeah. So that's kind of ridiculous, right? Okay. So team members are also in the best position because they interact and see the leader all the time. So what do they need to improve? Whether they are going in the right direction. And that's why, as Dia mentioned, the best way is the 360-degree feedback. You can repeat it at the beginning of the intervention, at the end, if it's a long-term intervention. If not, you can do mini surveys, and there are different names for those. So they are pulse surveys or dipstick surveys or thermometer or whatever the names are there. But what you are saying is that, is anything changing after the leadership development program? Yes or no? Good. Okay. So here we are going to take a look at what factors make any leadership initiative impactful. What are the different kinds of leadership initiatives? You can send them to B schools, ISB or IIM or Harvard or fill in the blank. You can do internal programs, external programs, e-learning. Some large companies even have leadership universities. Yeah. So their own leadership universities. So the question is, what makes any of these programs impactful? So any thoughts? What makes any leadership program impactful? Anyone has any thoughts? Okay. So maybe you came here to find out what makes practical applications. Yeah, very true. Practical application. Okay. An open mind. True. If you don't change the mindsets, changed behavior. Absolutely. Yeah. So change in perception of the people. Yeah. Change in perception of the team. Absolutely. Okay. Great. So I guess you guys are in the right direction. So I'm going to take a quick look at why leadership initiatives fail. And the first one is from McKinsey. And there are 4 reasons. Yeah. And again, this is all in your PDF guide. I think it's 35 pages. I don't know exactly how much it is, but there is more than enough information in it. So first is overlooking context. So every company, every leader, every team is different. What works in one situation, it's unlikely to work in other situations. So in the same companies, I see leaders who are not assertive enough and others who are exactly the opposite. In the same company, I see leaders who micromanage and others who abdicate. The team members say, I need more support. Yeah. And then you send them to the same B school doing the same curriculum, and no wonder they don't learn anything or nothing changes. Decoupling of reflection from the real work. Yeah, as you say, practical application. So think about this. One of the B schools says we use the case study method. Good. Case study method looks good in a simulated environment. So I might learn how Coca-Cola expanded their sales in Brazil, So what does that have to do with my company? So very little of that is applicable there, and that's another reason. Third is, and I think Siva mentioned it, mindsets. So most programs do nothing to change the mindsets. So we go and we have intellectual learning, and I'll be discussing those intellectual learnings with my team. I'll put a LinkedIn post on the latest and greatest theory or model that I have learned without really applying anything. Yeah? And failing to measure results. So that is one of the biggest issues, because results are sometimes difficult to measure and they are hardly ever planned. Yeah, and we'll talk about this a little later. So I'm going to ask you to take a look at this slide for maybe 10 seconds, and then I'm going to ask you if you remember all four. Okay. So any thoughts? What are the four reasons given by McKinsey that training programs fail? Anyone? Okay, decontext, failing to measure results. Very nice. Anything else? Mindsets. Yeah, right. Great, guys. Thank you so much for paying attention. They say that one recall is 10 times as powerful as rereading 5 to 10 times. Yeah. No follow-up. Fantastic. Great, guys. So here is the next one. This is from Boston Consulting Group. So they give three reasons. So we think leadership as an event. Yeah. So it's an episode versus a continuous process. So not understanding that leadership development takes time and reinforcement at work and involvement from the team. Yeah. So without that, not much changes. That's the first. So it's not an event, it's a process. Next is standard curriculum and competency. So it's one size fits all approach instead of focusing on one or two individual skills. So we've all heard about the Einstein's quote. I'm not sure he said it, but it's attributed to him. So if you measure the intelligence of a fish by the fish's ability to climb a tree, then the fish would think that they are dumb, yeah, all their life. So what are the one or two individual skills this leader can develop so that they can move from the middle to the top 20th or top 10th percentile? And these are different for different leaders. So now you send them to a standard program, and how is that going to help them? They have had these issues for a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, and the standard curriculum does little. So you have to focus individual, customized, personalized skills for each leader that they develop. And then there's measuring the wrong kind of data on effectiveness. Yes, what do we measure? Number of training days and number of people covered and, so many vanity metrics, as we call it. Yeah. So it looks good. But what we should measure is what is the behavior change at work, right? So we did N number of training programs and we covered N number of people and we sent N number of people to business school and they are all leadership trained, but did anything change at work? Yeah. So take a look at this slide and I'm going to ask you again the three reasons from BCG as to why leadership programs are ineffective. Why do they fail? Okay. So before we go to the next slide, recall, what are the three reasons? So should I go back to the back slide or measuring effectiveness? Okay. Tracking the wrong indicators. Yeah. Okay. On and off. Yeah. It's not an episode that you watch and you are done. Yeah. So people think that, hey, today this leader is working on communication and next episode, then they're working on time management. One size fits all. Yeah. Cookie cutter programs. Very nice. My kudos to you guys again. You guys are paying fantastic attention. Thank you so much. Okay, great. So we'll move on. So what are the traditional leadership development programs? We think sending them to a business school is great. And you can look at the ROI of business schools and the studies and you'd be surprised, So I don't want to taint your own research, but take a look at them. And then there are internal and external training programs. So business schools are looking backwards. By the time it comes into a business schools, it's 10 to 20 years old, any theory, whether it's situational leadership, and it has no relevance. In 10 or 20 years, has the world changed? A little, a lot, yeah. So business school looks good on the resume, but not good for business results. For the leader, it's good. So if you are using it as a reward for good performance, great. But if you are using it to develop this leader, I think it's not a good idea. And then internal and external leadership programs focus on intellectual knowledge. Sometimes the latest fad. So one of them is psychological safety. Yeah. So I might learn a little bit about psychological safety in a 1-hour program on LinkedIn, and I think I know psychological safety. Yeah. So that's not what it is. It's applying it at your work. Yeah? And then we don't measure the results where it matters. Yeah. So we said that this leader is a better leader because he or she went to ISB or Harvard or MIT or fill in the blank, Stanford. But that's not the measure, right? What is the measure? The customers. Did the customers say that the leader improved or no? So those are the issues with the traditional leadership programs. And then we have e-learning. So I have nothing against e-learning. It's a fantastic tool for intellectual knowledge. But if you think that e-learning will teach you behavior, e-learning will teach you leadership, then you are thinking that I can watch a video on e-learning on swimming and I'll learn how to swim. Yeah, does that work? So e-learning is excellent for pre and post activities and continuous reinforcement and micro bite-sized things. But you think you do a course and you would be a better leader? Think again. Yeah. Okay. All right. So these are the issues with traditional leadership programs, whether it's B-School, whether it is internal or external programs, or whether it is e-learning. Yeah. So those are some of the issues with those. Okay. So here are some statistics. Over 100 billion is spent annually. So 1 billion is 7.5 crores in INR. So you can multiply. So that much money is spent. And Boston Consulting Group says that most of it is wasted. Yeah, most of it is wasted. And I think intuitively we know also. We know that we need to do leadership programs, but we are afraid that the leadership programs we do, when the CEO asks us that, what was the impact? We don't have a clear-cut answer, right? So that's the issue. And in fact, studies show that again and again, year over year, maybe 10 to 15% of the CEOs think that their leadership development initiatives have any business impact. Yeah. Okay. Then, as I said, leadership development, 89% of the CEOs say that it's their top priority. How many think it has any business impact? 10%. Yeah. So this was, I think, 2018 survey, but year after year, the statistics remain in this range. Less than 20% of the CEOs are happy with their own leadership development initiatives, internal, external, training, coaching, whatever. Yeah. Okay. And here's a article from Forbes, and you can Google it. If you think leadership development is a waste of time, you may be right. So Christy Hedges, I think she's also at BCG. She wrote this article. And so our suggestion is, when you think of leadership development, don't think of the traditional programs because mostly they are a waste of time, effort, and money. And more importantly, opportunity. You think that you're doing leadership development, but you're doing nothing. You're just spinning your wheels, going nowhere. Does it make sense? Yeah. Okay. So here is, again, all of this is in your PDF that you'll be getting later. How to improve the effectiveness of your leadership programs. So any thoughts so far before I cover it? How would you improve the effectiveness of your leadership programs? Having learned what you learned so far, just a couple of points. So I know you are awake and alive. We need to have one in the first place, obviously, yeah? Sometimes leadership learning is informal, but a formal program helps. Anyone else? Anything you think you should do to improve the effectiveness of your leadership programs? Experiential learning, yeah. Okay, great. Anything else? Okay, no worries. So I'll talk about these points, how to get measurable return on investment from building relationships. Yeah, that's part of getting work done through others. Without good relationships and trust, you can't get work done. Okay. Focus on weaknesses. Okay. True. So if the weaknesses are kind of a fatal flaw, then you can do that. But if I have gotten 2 A's and 2 B's and 1 C, then forget about the C. Let's just convert the B's into A's. Yeah. Okay. So here are some of the thoughts from my experience as well as from research. Stop sending a few people to episodic leadership development programs. So today's episode is communication. Next month's episode is time management, because it doesn't do anything. It just gives us a false sense. And you'd be surprised companies do this for years and years and years before they realize that something's not working. Customize leadership development to individual leader and the organizational context. Yeah. So we talked about it earlier, and you guys correctly identified the key competencies for Google, for Starbucks, for Walmart, you know. So what is the point in not developing those? So every situation, you send all these leaders, you know, one from Starbucks, one from Google, and one from Walmart to the same program. How is it going to help them, right? And so organizational context also. So let's say my improvement area is communicate more. So what does it mean in my context? Do I need to communicate more with my stakeholders, with my vendors? So that is the next point, that we utilize the collective intelligence of your diverse team, and by involving the leaders team members in the leadership development initiative. So that's what we need to do. So think about it. The days of a heroic leader are gone. It's only in the Hollywood and Bollywood movies. Yeah, one leader does everything. Today, probably 90% of the work is done in complex teams, and no one has all the answers. So unless you utilize the collective intelligence of the teams, what a certain competency means in your context, because they have the ringside seats and you don't involve them, and you send a leader to Harvard, and when he or she comes in, it's all Greek and Latin. Yeah. So involve the team members. And measure what matters, behavior change at work, and not the vanity metrics, so that we discussed a little bit earlier. Yeah. So behavior change at work is the acid test of any leadership development program. And then have a comprehensive leadership strategy that's long term. So, you know, how long does it take to change the culture? So let's say we want our company to be more innovative or more customer focused, or, you know, fill in the blank, whatever is applicable to you. How long would it take? Sending them to a 1-month program, would that do it? And we know the answer. Yeah, the answer is no, but we still keep doing that. And so it takes 1 to 2 years to see the green shoots from the leadership development. And it takes anywhere from 2 to 5 years to change the culture permanently and irreversibly. But remember, that is the best return on investment you would get. Yeah. Okay, great. Workshop on specific requirement. That's what Venkat says. So you have to have at least 3 to 5 year comprehensive leadership development strategy. Yeah. And then connect leadership application at work. Yeah. So that disconnect is what kills most leadership programs. So I go into a class and I learn swimming, and then I come back and I have to ride a bicycle. So there's little connect between what I need to do. Okay. Yeah, Dia says that how do you factor in attrition with such long-term investment? Yeah. So it reminds me of that quote that, you know, the CEO versus CFO conversation. What if you train your people and they leave? Yeah. And the CFO says this to CEO, what if you train your people and they leave? And the CEO says, what if we don't train them and they stay? In fact, a career path and development opportunity is one of the most important reasons people stay or leave. And you can check it yourself, various studies. So I think leadership development is important, and it kind of helps reduction in attrition. Okay, focus on changing both mindsets and skill sets. So which comes first? So mindset and skill set is chicken versus egg. So there is article from Herminia Ibarra on my website. Most of the times we think that change occurs by thinking first, but actual results show that change occurs most of the times by doing things differently. Yeah. So instead of talking about how I should appreciate my team members, if I take responsibility to appreciate one team member daily, my thinking would change in a month or two because I'll see the benefits of those. So this is kind of a chicken or an egg story, which came first, and it's either a reinforcing cycle or vicious cycle. And who should be trained in leadership first? The top or the bottom? What do you think? So every time I had a dollar where a leader we spoke with in organization said that, I think our leadership team is okay, but you need to fix these guys under us. They don't have commitment. They don't have engagement. They are not focusing on business results. Guess what? You have to start with yourself. Yeah. You want more engagement? You be more engaged. You want more appreciation? You be more appreciated, right? So you have to start with the CEOs and C-suite, because remember, leaders cast a long shadow. How many times has it worked where I use my phone in the meetings, but I tell my team members don't use phone in the meetings? You know, I come home and I'm watching TV for 2-3 hours and I tell my children to study. Does it work? Can you share your thoughts? If I preach, but if I don't practice, does it work? Does it work at home? Does it work in leadership? So this is what we do most of the times. We don't do it, or we don't want to do it. HR or learning, yeah, walk the talk. Yeah, absolutely. HR and top leadership team. So HR can facilitate. Leadership development, talent management team can facilitate, but the buck stops with the top leaders. If they get involved, then all, and I'll share my experience. We had 3 locations with a large company. 2 locations, the leaders started their 360 first, and they started getting inputs first. Guess what? We had no resistance from levels down. Yeah, everyone was involved. They're following the leader. And in one location, we had a hard time. Yeah. So monkey see, monkey do. Next. Start with and include the entire executive team. Yeah, because this is a multiplier and a cascading effect. And I'll talk about this, the executive leadership and senior leadership team, in the last hour, the 3rd session. Yeah. So you guys remember any of the things that we mentioned? Just a quick recall. How can you make leadership programs more effective? If you can recall 1 or 2, that would be great. If everyone can recall at least 1 point, then I'll give you a virtual chocolate or virtual bonus points or tokens or coins. So we discussed about 9 or 10 points to improve the effectiveness of your leadership programs. Okay. Practical application. Anything else? So everyone has to give me 1, no? No episodic programs. All right. Thank you. Start with yourself. Customize. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Yeah. Application. Correct. Involve the teams. Very important. Effective feedback. True. As you move up the career ladder, focus on your context. It's extremely important, because if you don't, then you are developing the wrong competencies. Great. Fantastic, guys. Thank you. Okay. So there are phases in leadership development process, and it's kind of simple. So the first one is what you do before the actual training event. Yeah. And then the second is the event itself. And then it's the post-event activities. Is this clear? Yeah. So 3 things. What do you do before the actual training? And training could be a 1 day or a 1 month or a 10 session. It doesn't matter. What you do before the training starts, what you do after the training ends, and what you do during the training. So here's a question for you, and you can type your answers, and there'll be 3 numbers, right? So if the total impact of the entire program was 100%, what was the contribution of the pre, during, and post activities? So I'll give you an example. So I might say that each one is 33%. pre-training activity accounts for 33%, during the training 33%, and post-training 33%. Or you can say pre-training accounts for 10% and post-training accounts for 90%. So what are your thoughts? Share three numbers. Is it clear? Yeah. 40, 10, 50. Okay, Simon. Okay. Only 10 for the actual training. Oh, okay. Anyone else? So this is just a guess. This is your perception. This is not 20, 30, 50, 20, 10, and 70. Okay. 10, 30, and 70. So that's 110%. Okay. 50, 20, 30. Okay. Good. So I think what answers I'm getting so far is that the actual training is not as important as we think it is. True? Okay. So here's the next question. Thank you. Thank you for the answers. How much money is spent in pre-training? And I'm just taking money as an example. We're talking about money, time, and effort in the same three things. So in your organization or in your observation in previous organizations, how much money, time, and effort is spent in pre, during, and post activities? 10, 90, and 0. Right. Okay. Anyone else? 20, 70, and 10. Yeah. 50, 20, and 30. 15 pre. Siva, you must have a 10, 80, and 10. Okay. Anyone else? Good. So you guys see the problem here? Yeah, you see the issue 20, 60, 20, right? So you guys see the issue here? So here is one of the studies, again, from Zenger-Folkman. And can you see what it shows? So on the top, you have the value contributed by each phase. So 26% is pre, 24% is during, and 50% is post. And estimates of how much time, effort, and money is spent, 10%, 85%, and 5%. So that's an issue. True? Can we move on then? Okay. So how to improve the effectiveness of your leadership development program? Here is one more. And this is a large-scale study on what makes any leadership development initiative impactful. You guys ready for this? If you're ready, type yes. So it could be any kind of a program. If you want to make it more impactful, this is what you need to do. Okay. Anyone else ready? Neha is ready. Okay, good. Thank you. Great, great, great. Okay, thank you, Pankaj. Thank you, Manjari. Okay, so Marshall Goldsmith and Howard Morgan did a study of 86,000 leaders. So a lot of times Marshall Goldsmith was asked these questions that do people really change because of leadership development programs? And his answer always was, I don't know. Yeah, and it's the correct answer. And then he did this large-scale study of 86,000 leaders at 8 large multinational corporations. Yeah. So what were the kind of companies and what are the kind of programs? I'll just give you a brief overview. And there's an article on our website, and this is also in your PDF post-session workbook. So there was a defense contractor who had 1,500 mid-level managers. Diversified conglomerate with 6,700 managers. A pharma company starting with CEO and the entire team. So 8 different companies and different programs. So the outcome they wanted was identical, which is sustained behavior at work, but their approaches were different. Someone had classroom-based training, someone had on-job practice, some were short-term, some were long-term, some were coaching and mentoring, some were internal trainers, some were external trainers and coaches, and so on and so forth. So there's a whole bunch of variety in this large 8 multinational corporations in a study of 86,000 leaders. Yeah, 8 multinationals, 86,000 leaders. And as I said, different approaches, different programs. And they didn't want to measure the participant happiness. On the Kirkpatrick's levels, the first level is, did you like the program, right? So that is not a good measure. They wanted to measure behavior change at work. And I think we should do that also, correct? Okay, so here is the first graph. Okay, so what is this first graph? These are different companies, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this is the mean leader. Mean is the average, and this is the percentage of perceived change from -3 to +3, right? So -3 means the leader is worse than before. -1 is, or say 0 is no change. +1 is little better. +3 is much better. So first one is, my coworker did no follow-up after the training program. No follow-up. So do you realize this? This looks like what curve? Anyone? This chart looks like what we know as bell curve, right? So thank you, Neha. So bell curve. So instead of sending, if you did no follow-up, instead of sending your people to leadership development programs, you might as well give them the money for bonus. You might as well ask them to watch movies on Netflix, because if you don't do any follow-up, it's going to be a bell curve. Some people are going to improve, some are not, and it's just chance. Yeah. Next graph. My coworker did some follow-up. So what do you see here in this graph? Where has the graph moved? To the left, to the right? What do you think? Type your answers. Has this graph moved? Which side has this graph moved? To the right. And what does it mean? When the graph moves to the right, it means that the 360 or the perceived change came much better. And why did this happen? Because my coworker did some follow-up. Yeah, so there was some follow-up. And the third and final one is, my coworker did consistent or periodic follow-up. So this was a regular, planned, consistent follow-up on a regular basis, and it has moved to the right. Does it make sense? So what is the key learning from these three graphs? I'm going to show you all three, starting from the first one. So this is the first one, bell curve, no follow-up. This is the second one, some follow-up, and you can see the shift to the right. And this is the third and final one, continuous or periodic follow-up. Yeah, so this is all the way to the right. So what is the learning from this? A quick word or two. Can you type your answers? What is the learning from this? What should we do or not do? Regular follow-up, regular follow-up, 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 right? So follow-up, follow-up, follow-up. And as we saw in the earlier, follow-up commitments and practical applications. Great, guys. So that's what is, obviously you already told me that it's missing in most programs. 10% of the money and energy is spent on post-training activities, and we need to increase that. So one more thing, what was common in these 8 different MNCs and various approaches? So every leader received a 360-degree feedback from their co-workers, and debriefing and report sharing sessions with internal or external coach, doesn't matter. And every leader picked either 1, 2, or 3 areas to improve upon. You are not, improving in 15 competencies, you are improving in the key competencies. And every leader was asked to involve their co-workers through regular follow-up, asking for feedback and feed forward. Does it make sense? And follow-up and accountability. Follow-up, follow-up, follow-up. And that was done through mini surveys, pulse surveys, or dipstick surveys. So whether the leader is improving or not, we can find out. And this was the kind of scale, -3 to +3 for some organizations. For other organizations, this was 0 to 5. Okay. So what is the conclusion? And here is a question. If you don't take anything from this program, this is the question you have to ask all the time when you do any kind of a leadership development program. And that will be your money's worth for this time and money invested. So who actually decides whether a leader is effective or has improved? The leader himself or those who work with that leader? Obviously, it's the people around. And then how effective and resource efficient are leadership development programs that don't change the perception of those who work with the leader? So if your customers don't tell you that your product has improved, why do you keep spending money on product improvement? Does it make sense? You are spending money on improving your product, in this case, leaders, and you are not measuring whether the customers of this product are thinking that the product has improved or not, right? So we have come to two things: question and answers and turn knowledge into action. So I think we need to allow everyone. Yeah. So any questions? So in my training programs, I kind of joke, when there are no questions, it means two things. Either everyone has understood everything or no one has understood nothing. So with you smart people, I'm thinking that it's the former, not the latter. Yeah. Which study, Dia? Is it the Marshall Goldsmith?
Yeah, the one with Marshall Goldsmith and Harvard.
Yeah. So I'll ask one of my team members to send you that article. And if I believe that the link to that article is already in the PDF guide that you will get.
Okay, thank you.
Running surveys. Yeah. Very true, Shevanti. So remember, the pulse or dipstick surveys are just like checking your WhatsApp. So these days, or social media, I have nothing against any particular, against any social media, but it takes 3 to 5 minutes at their convenience on whatever device they want. So the pulse or dipstick surveys, they have made it very nice. And then there is some social element to that also. They'll give you a running meter of 33% of the people have filled it. So it makes it easy. Years back, people used to do a 360 in the beginning of leadership development and 360 degree again at the end. And 360 degree takes somewhere between 15 to 25 minutes. But this pulse surveys, whether the leader has improved in the 2 or 3 critical areas that they are working on, that's very easy to do. So I'm hoping that that answers your question. Okay, how does one convince the leadership team that a standard program is not the answer? So Aparna, I'm thinking that send them to my training program, jokingly, right? You can Google any specific article on why most of the B-School programs don't work. They're good if you are going to use them as a reward for doing some hard work or delivering some business results. That's fine. So maybe share an article or two and do a pulse survey before and after the leader has gone through a B-School. So it could be your own experience in your organization or previous organization. Specific article? Yeah, sure. We'll send you one. We'll send you one. Any other questions? In fact, yeah.
This is Pankaj. What you covered make a lot of sense, but the challenge is this, as you mentioned, it has to start with the top layer, right? It cannot generally, we are good, it is just to start next layer would not work, right?
Yeah.
And it has to not only start at the topmost layer, it also has to then go through this follow up, right? Because it's not just the session, it is a lot of it is post sessions, personalized session follow-ups, where you have to ask your team, get a very honest feedback that has what has been the change. Is it positive, negative, same, and get
Right.
that very honestly. When
Correct.
you mix the three elements, that it has to start with me.
Hmm.
Uh, it is not just a session, but it has to be followed through and has to be reflected in my behavior, which basically means my people have to uh, report or give the feedback that how has been the change. And I have been able to create a fearless environment where my people are able to report it on me.
Right.
Getting all that, it makes perfect sense. But the question is, how would you get it at that layer and all these three elements is placed? That's where at least I see a lot of challenges in different organizations I have tried.
Right. Right.
Wherever it has been successful, this has made a lot of difference. But whereas where it has not been, it's because of these reasons. So the question is, how would you make it that happen at that layer?
Right. So one of the things that I have learned, and I think that's true, is as a CEO, if you start with your own feedback, and I think we are going to cover that in the last hour. And as I said, this framework works whether you do it yourself with your team or you hire us or anyone else to do it. But these are the elements that make it successful. So you can do it yourself also. So you can start with your own, saying that I think I am a good CEO because we have brought this company up to here, but I am not perfect. And I'm sure there are areas I need to improve. And so that will help the team and that will help the organization achieve better results. So I'm going to send you this link to a survey 360 where you can tell me whether I'm going to do what I'm doing well. And so the trick is to make it anonymous, because if I work under you, and although you have created a fearless environment, it's not a career enhancing strategy to tell Pankaj that, hey, you talk too much. So people don't give that feedback unless it's anonymous. And that's where usually an external consultant brings in where they have no stakes. So it's not related to performance management. I will not be on the bad side of the leader. He will not, put me in some position or a project that I don't like because I gave him or her an honest feedback. So it usually starts with you, and then you can say that, hey, how about our executive leadership team? And I'm coming to that, and I think you will like that part. What is your executive leadership team and senior leadership team, and what is riding on them? So I'm hoping that I answered your question partially. Role model it to your team.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, and having an external party usually helps. So when people do internal 360, I bet you we can do it internally and externally, and the results will always come different. And we use a lot of tools. Say, for example, certain organizations. One of the organizations we used anonymous feedback box. It's simple. You can create it on so many different apps, and you guys are more knowledgeable about that. So instead of me saying on the leader's face that in the last meeting you went on and on, people can anonymously put that feedback, and then once a week we kind of collect the feedback, cull it for if it points to any specific person, and then deliver it to the leader. So that is also a possibility. So that way you are getting the feedback, but you cannot give it to a specific person. You cannot attribute to a specific person. So those are the kinds of things can always be done. And then some people go to the extreme. Say, for example, and there's an article on my website on Bridgewater Associates, Ray Dalio, world's largest hedge fund. And his organization has been considered as one of the learning organizations. And he believes in what they call radical transparency. So if I don't like your shirt, I'm going to tell you your shirt is not right. So that is not radical transparency. Radical transparency is if I don't like something you did. And so one of the employees sent him an email that in your last presentation, you were completely unprepared, you wasted everyone's time, and don't do it again. So he sent this leader to his CEO, and what does the CEO do? He sends it to all of his 1,500 employees saying that this is what I did. And he records all meetings. Everyone carries their performance card and improvement areas. So that is taking it to the extreme, but you don't have to do that. If the scale is from 0 to 100, you can slide towards the better part. Does it make sense?
Sure, sure.
Yeah. Any other questions?
See, even in the external intervention, of course, the results are different and it's
Yeah.
I completely agree.
Right.
But at times, how would you ensure that when you are dealing with executive or senior leadership team, I think authenticity and honesty, whatever you want to call it, is also very critical even when an external intervention. Because if executive leadership team, we are not being very authentic and honest,
Yeah.
transparent.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how would you resolve that, or how would you
Right.
first ensure that
Right.
elements are in place?
Yeah. Yeah, makes sense. So there is no one right way to leadership, and every leader is different. So we do an activity which is called ALM, which is Authentic Leadership Model, and it's a group training session. And it starts with value clarification and deciding authentic leadership model for each leader. And I'm not saying do it with me, but having value clarification and announcing it to everyone that this is who I am and this is what I expect from my team allows people to know the person in 5 minutes. A new employee who joins under this leader would know that this is what this leader stands for and this is what he or she expects. So you are absolutely right. Having authenticity in leadership helps because I don't have to apply a specific technique, of giving feedback or appreciating or, whatever, convincing. I am myself. This is how I am and this is what I do. So that helps. Any other questions? Should we take one more question if anyone has it, and then we'll take a 5-minute break? No more questions? Okay. So remember, after the session today, you have a one-on-one conversation with me where you can pick my brain and give me all the reasons this won't work or that won't work. And I'd be happy to share my thoughts on that maybe this may work, maybe this won't work, or how, what will work or what will not. So if you have any questions, you can always write it down. And this is a one-on-one conversation. So it'll be confidential. Okay. So it's 5:02. Should we take 5-minute break and we return by 5:07 or 5:10? Again, Indian Standard Time, 10 minutes past 5. If we can return, that would be fantastic. Thanks, guys. We'll see you in a little bit. Hopefully you guys are back. Welcome back. And here is the next question, slightly more difficult one, because now you have to answer the question. How will you turn the knowledge into action? Any thoughts? Okay, by empowering, good. Anything else from today's session? Customization and how to involve teams even more at pre-stage. Perfect. Thank you, Shivanti. Application. Yes, Sridhar. All the knowledge in the world doesn't do you any good, right? I might know 550 different asanas, yogasanas or exercises, but if I don't do even one, what difference does it make? And that's what, as ridiculous as it sounds, this is what many leaders do. They talk about 50 different theories, but they don't apply one. And we keep on sending them to programs that increase their intellectual knowledge. Okay, by involving team members and introducing pulse surveys. Yeah. So pulse surveys, what does is that it makes the leader accountable. Otherwise, they think that the training program is done. And in Hindi, we say, raat gayi, baat gayi, so it's done now, it's over. So they know that a month from now, a pulse survey is going to be on me, whether I'm improving in these areas or no. Believe that small incremental changes are enough to aim for. Yeah, correct. Effective follow-ups. Yeah. Any other thoughts? Is everyone here? If you are not here, please type no. Okay, Pankaj. Right. Okay. So we'll move on. And if someone's joining late, then maybe they can catch up. All right. So I'm going to talk about world's #1 leadership development process, and you can do it yourself. Yeah. You don't need us. You can apply it yourself. And the details are also in your PDF book. Okay. So it's a proven leadership development model you can use for yourself, coach your team members, and even build better teams. And Global Gurus ranked this as #1 rated coaching program for 2020 out of all the leadership coaching programs in the world. So over 1 million leaders worldwide have been coached in the last 30 plus years with this program, with an effectiveness rate of 95%. Yeah, 95% of the leaders get better when they go through this program. And better is not decided by the leader, better is not decided by the coach. And as you already know now, better is decided anonymously by the leader's own team members. Yeah? What could be more useful than that? Yeah. So it is simple to understand, and you can implement it in your company. But as we say, simple doesn't mean easy. So losing weight, it's so simple, right? I can say it in 4 words. Less calories, burn more calories, maybe in a sentence or 2. But it's not so easy to do. So simple doesn't mean easy, but it's simple to understand. So question is, would you like to learn more about it? If yes, then we will proceed. Otherwise, we'll go to the next section. Yes, Sergeant says yes. Anyone else? Okay, yes. Okay. I was looking for empathetic yes. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. Anyone else? I'm assuming everyone wants to know about this. Okay. So as we talked about it earlier, behavioral skills and knowing versus doing. So leaders have gone through leadership training programs for years. Their problem is not knowing, their problem is doing. And that's where this program helps changing behavior at work. So, in your opinion, at leadership level, which one are more important, behavioral skills versus technical skills? And you can kind of put a number, let's say 50% behavioral, 50% technical, or 90% behavioral, 10% technical. So what are your thoughts? Technical means functional. So if I'm an accountant, if I'm a CFO, do I know what I need to do? If I'm a project engineer, if I'm a programmer, do I know about my function? 80-20, 80 behavioral. Okay. Shivanti says the same thing. Yeah. 90-10. Yeah. So I think 60-40. Okay. So we are kind of in an agreement. And so what happens is that if you reach leadership level, you would not reach leadership level unless you had adequate amounts of functional or technical skills. Is that right? Yeah. So at that point of time, the differentiator between the top leaders and the bottom leaders is no more behavioral. It's no more behavioral. It's no more technical. It's only behavioral. And at that level, you are not doing anything yourself. You are making other people do the work. So that's why it is important. So Daniel Goleman's study have shown again and again that 75% to 87% of the difference in performance of the top leaders and the bottom leaders in the same company, it's because of behavioral skills. Does it make sense? And that's why this process focuses on behavioral change. So this is 8 steps to behavioral change. So first one is involve leaders being coached in determining the desired behaviors in their leadership roles. So have you tried to change the behavior of someone who didn't want to change? Maybe your better half? You know, I've been probably trying it for 27 years, but I am dumb enough to still keep trying. So if they are not interested, don't bother. Yeah. So, and conversely, let them choose something that they are passionate about improving so that there will be commitment. But we can always guide them in the right direction with the 360, with the pulse surveys, etc. Involve the leaders being coached in determining key stakeholders. So without accountability, you cannot improve, but let the leader have a say in who they want to pick. So initially they might, not want to pick a certain person, but over a period of time, 3 months, 6 months later, they'll usually add them also. Collect feedback and collect it anonymously. That's where the coach earns their money. Yeah. So I always tell this story that we heard as children, who will bell the cat, no? So there's a whole bunch of mice living in a house, mouse. And there's a cat that would come in any time and eat one of the mice, So all the mice get together and they say that we need to put a bell in the neck of this cat so that whenever the cat is coming, we will know and we can run and hide. So everyone's so excited. Yeah, let's bell the cat. Let's bell the cat. And then one wise mouse says, it's a fantastic idea. Just tell me who's going to bell the cat, right? So here we will bell the cat with the 360 at our side. We will tell the leaders that these are the things that you do well and these are the things that you don't do so well. So what do you think now? Yeah. So and then determine key behaviors for change. So how many areas you should choose? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10. Just type in a number. How many improvement areas you should choose for the leader? Is it 1? Is it 2? Is it 5? Is it 10? Yeah, perfect. 2 to 3. Yeah. So remember 1 to 3 because changing behavior is not easy. And if you keep rolling, a rolling stone gathers no moss. Yeah, correct. Max 3. That's right. Okay. Have the coaching client respond to key stakeholders. So they need to respond to the team members and be ready to get their inputs, both feedback and feed forward, and review what has been learned and help them develop an action plan. So a whole bunch of people are saying that you don't appreciate your team members and you are too critical, or any new ideas, you shoot it down. So what do you think we should do about this? Get their ideas from team members and prioritize and pick 1 or 2 behaviors to change. Yeah. And develop an ongoing follow-up process. Is it clear? So involve the leaders, what behaviors they need to change, who should be involved as their team members, collect anonymous feedback from them, determine 2 or 3 key behaviors, work with the team, get their inputs, review, make a plan, implement the plan, and follow up. Sounds simple, right? So here, and review the results again and start. So Here is the monthly process or cycle that we say in this. So ask, listen, thank, think, respond, change, and follow up. So let's say I am the leader and my feedback comes in and I have decided to improve in 2 areas. I am too critical and not appreciative, and I speak too much and I am not open to new ideas. So what I'll do is I'll ask my team members that, hey, dear team member, thank you for the fantastic feedback that you gave me. Here are my strengths and here are my couple of improvement areas. Can you give me a suggestion or 2 that I can implement in the next month? Yeah. Okay, Sarabjit, last slide. In case you missed it, no worries. This 8 steps are in your PDF guide also. Okay, so no worries. So I'll go and ask that people say I'm not open to new ideas and I don't listen. What should I do? So then someone would say that, hey, in the meetings, you are interrupting people. Stop doing that. Share your ideas at the end. Before you share your ideas, compiles everyone's opinions. Use words like, I think this idea is also fantastic. I didn't think about this. So I want to put in my perspective. So with those kinds of things, people see that you are considering other people's ideas. So now when someone says something to you, listen. So normally when someone gives a feedback, the first thing we do is the last thing we should do. So we try to justify, explain, give reasons. So this is like someone is giving you a gift, because feedback is a gift. And you are saying, no, I don't like your gift. Well, if you don't like the gift, you have a choice of not using it, but you can't tell the person that, hey, take back your gift. It's no good. So that's what you don't need to do. And you thank them. So thank you for sharing your opinion. Does it mean that you agree with them? No. You are considering their thoughts, and then you think. So if you have 10 team members, you might get 10, 15, 20 suggestions. You prioritize the feedback and act on only 2 or 3. And then you respond and tell them that, hey, these are the 2 things I'm going to do. I'm going to not interrupt anyone in the meeting, and I'm going to summarize at the end. So whether I'm doing it or not, that is the change. And then I follow up. So a week later, a month later, I follow up and ask them 2 questions. Hey, how did I do on my 2 commitments for the last month or last week? And what else should I continue doing for the future? Give me more suggestions. Yeah. As simple as this process sounds, it is 95% effective in changing the perception and leaders' behaviors both. Yeah. Okay. All right. So feedback versus feed forward. Yeah. So providing feedback is an essential skills for managers and leaders that we know, but we give feedback. We don't receive feedback. So feedback is top down. The boss calls you and gives you a feedback on your performance. Here you are dealing with fundamental issues with feedback. What are the fundamental issues? It focuses on the past, which cannot be changed. So, no offense to the fairer sex ladies, but, I saw a cartoon a long time ago where a woman, Indian woman in a sari, has a red dot on her forehead, and a Caucasian white person is asking her, what is this red dot for? So it says it's a recording device. When our husbands say or do anything, it will be used against them a year from now, 10 years from now, 50 years from now. So jokingly, how do you feel when people bring all your past commissions or omissions, things you have done or not done, again and again and again? So what are the feelings that normally come out? So it's guilt, it's shame, it's defense, it's blame, nothing good. Yeah. So what we do instead is we need to focus on the future. So in the past, I didn't listen. My apologies. What can I do to become a better listener in the future? I didn't appreciate in the past. So that's the beauty of this process. Leaders are achievement oriented. No one can change the past, but anyone can change the future. And this kind of appeals to their egos as well as achievement orientation. Yeah. So this is the problem with the feedback. No one enjoys it, but most people enjoy the feed forward process. And we also tell the team members, the people who are giving feedback, that you have to let go of the past. Nobody can change the past. They can only learn and apologize. Be helpful, supportive, not cynical, sarcastical, or judgmental. Yeah. So how do anyone feels when a spouse remembers something from 15 years ago that you forgot her birthday or his birthday? Yeah. So what's the point? Instead say that, hey, my next birthday, I want a nice party. And then that is something that person can do, you know, and don't be judgmental. And third and most important is tell the truth. And the last one, pick something to improve yourself. So when you and I are both together going on a journey of self-improvement, I am no better than you. You are no better than me. We are together and I can help you and you can help me. Does it make sense? Type yes if this makes sense. Yeah. So feedback is wrong. Feed forward is useful. So, and what does performance management focus on? Is it feedback or feed forward? What does performance management do? Can you type your answers? Performance management is looking backward. Feedback, yeah, and no one feels good about feedback. Yeah. So performance management and 360s in organizations are like looking in the rear view mirror of the car and driving. You need to look in the rear view mirror once in a while, but most of the times you need to look through the windshield as to what you can do for the future. Yeah. Okay. All right. So this process we offer, which helps successful leaders achieve positive long-term measurable change in behavior. And who decides this change in behavior? Can you type in your answers? Who decides the leader's change in behavior? Is it the leader? Is it the coach? That's the team. Yeah, I think that answer is now reinforced, and that too anonymous. Yeah. So if you ask me to my face whether my boss has improved, I might not say yes or no. You know, politely I might say yes. Maybe if I'm afraid, and I might say yes. But this is an anonymous assessment. Okay, and this is the question we ask. What are the key behaviors that will make biggest positive change in increased leadership effectiveness and business results? Yeah. So focus on 80-20. What are the most important behaviors? And then who are the key people who can see you in action, whether this change has occurred or not, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 12 months from now? And the most unique part is we get paid based on results, not how much time we spend with you or how much the leader likes the coach or no. And what are results? Improvement in the perception by stakeholders of the leader's behavior. So when was the last time you heard from a vendor that pay us after we get you results? Yeah. Okay. So take a look at this ineffective leadership habits. And these are also in your workbook. And what I want you to do is think about a leader in your organization, and maybe it's even you. And do you have any of these ineffective leadership habits? And what is it costing you? Let's say a year from now, you haven't done anything and these habits are continuing, versus a year from now, you have really changed as recognized by 5, 10, 15 of your key team members. So what would be the impact of not changing and changing? So I'll put these and I'll allow you to take a look at it. And tell me if you know a leader in your organization who has one of these. How many leaders, type your answer, you know that could improve one of these ineffective habits? If the answer is 0, you guys have great leaders. Okay. And all, yeah, it's not one person who has all these bad habits. Usually it's, 1 or 2 that are the bottlenecks or the fatal flaws. Yeah. And usually it's quite a few people. And, whenever I say this, people start thinking, yeah, I know Rajesh, or I know Rima, or I know this person that if she only does this, then that would be fantastic. Otherwise, she's a great person, asset to the company, but she keeps doing this and that annoys everyone. Yeah. So here is the list further, some more. So this list remind you of anyone? At least 3 or 4 of these reminds me of myself. Okay, so these are also in your workbook or guide. And so think about this. What is it costing? A year from now, they don't change. And a year from now, they are changed. And remember the changes as judged by the team members. What will be the consequences? What would be a dollar amount that you can put, or an INR amount you can put in value to that? Yeah. So this is the opposite. These are the most frequently selected growth areas by leaders worldwide. And we have a list of 20 that we have put in your workbook also. So do you know a leader who could improve in one of these areas? And it's already in your PDF, but you can kind of take a look at it. Do you think you can improve in one of these areas? Any one of those? Be more entrepreneurial, take calculated risks, invest in continuous learning and development. Anyone appeals to you? Be needed by the leader in your organization? Yeah. Correct. And earlier, post-pandemic, I think Shevanti asked the question, which are the competencies? So these are some of them. Okay. So here are a few more, and I'll let you take a look at them. So imagine in terms of what is it costing you if you don't improve your leaders in these areas? Yeah. And what would be the benefits if you do? So these are in your workbook anyway, so I'll move on. And here is a real pulse survey, or we call leadership growth progress review, and a leader. And I think the video is in your workbook also, how we did it. So you can click the link and it'll play the video in from your workbook. So 2 areas. The first one for this person was build trust. So this was the first mini survey, and the team members had to rate from -3 to +3. In the first one, it was 1.2. In the second one, it was 1.8, a positive one. And in the third one, it was 2.6. So remember, I'm not rating this. The leader is not rating this. The team members average is that. And collaborate with others. So +1.5, +2.1, and +2.8. And these are some of the comments. So after the first mini survey, the manager says, agrees improvement is needed, doing job better with overall communications. After the second one, he says he's been more proactive in communication, has listened more, accepted responsibility. And in the third one, he says that the effort and changes Jack has made are quite amazing. It's been over a year, and they are really a part of how we will continue to lead and manage. So a year from now, this could be you or any leader in your organization, and it's guaranteed and measurable results. Okay, so executive leadership team. So think about your organization, CEO, and then how many people report to the CEO directly. Can you give me a number? So sometimes you call them MD or whatever, but generally it's the same role. How many people report directly to the CEO in your organization? A guess, any number? 6, okay, 7, okay. Anyone else? 8, okay. Anyone else? Okay. So usually that is about the number, and usually it's less than 12. So if you look at it, this is how the structure mostly is, depending on whether it's an IT company or a traditional kind of a company with production, manufacturing, etc. So no more than 6 to 12 people report directly to the CEO. That's the executive leadership team. And the people who report to this second level, they are the senior leadership team. Yeah. So how many people report to these people, the second level in your organization? Just a wild guess. So who reports to the CHRO? How many people are there? Or who reports to the chief delivery officer? How many people are there in your organization? Just a 10 to 12. Okay. Any other number? Okay. Anyone else? How many people report to the second level? Okay. Still waiting for answers? Anyone? 8 to 10 only? Okay. Okay. So sometimes it's more, but that around makes sense. For each of these person, at least 2 or 3 people are reporting to them. You know, CHRO, 3 people might be reporting, talent management head or recruitment head, etc. So here are the expectations from your executive leadership team and senior leadership team on part of execution, business results. Yeah. So I'm going to just, yeah, obviously it depends on the organization, and that's why we said an approximate guess. Okay, so defining the vision, crafting strategy, doing a SWOT analysis, steer the company through changes, you know, the best political, economical, survive and thrive in the VUCA world. You know, companies have come and gone. Average lifespan of S&P 500 companies, it's now 18 years and reducing. So half of the companies that are in S&P 500 today will be gone by 2027. So that's and some new ones would come in. So it's a VUCA world. So these are the expectations from your senior leadership team: deliver profitable growth for all team members, all stakeholders. And that was the execution side. This is the people side. Yeah. So what do people expect? Communicate the direction, attract, retain, and engage the top talent, exhibit the behaviors that are inclusive, respectful, and supportive, inspiring, and providing meaning and purpose in work, listen to and act on employees' inputs, hold everyone, including themselves, accountable to high standards of performance. And so this is all that is lying on your senior leadership team. And then the next question is, what are you doing for your senior leadership team? Yeah. So here's an example, and the article is on our website, and it's also in your workbook. So Alan Mulally, when he took as the CEO of Ford in 2006, Ford had reported a $17 billion loss with a B. And the worst was yet to come, 2008 crisis. And he steered the company without taking bailout from the US government. And in 6 years, he delivered a profit of 6.6 billion. And the funny thing was, 14 out of the 16 board members who had a loss of 17 billion, the same 14 out of the 16 top leadership team delivered a profit of 6.6 billion. And how did he do it? He did it by supporting them, accountability, what he calls tough love. So he had zero tolerance for bad behavior, zero tolerance. Someone opened an email in their thing, he would stop the meeting immediately. Is there something that is urgent? So, and then what he did was, which was very unique, is he supported these leaders by providing them coach, executive coach. And that's the exact same process that we use, the stakeholder-centered coaching process. And that's what Alan Mulally used to turn around their senior leadership team and deliver a profitable growth. And so here are some of the accolades. He was considered the third best leader in the world, and I forgot the year, I think 2016, after the Pope and Angela Merkel. So what we are saying is that a lot is riding on your senior leadership team to deliver sustainable growth in a VUCA world and the new normal. And what are you doing for their development? Yeah, are you helping them, or is it a sink or swim approach? So don't do a sink or swim approach, set them up for success. Yeah. So we offer the world's #1 leadership development process. And what's unique about it? So we are about 5 minutes left, and then we'll take questions. So it's time and resource efficient. So the leader doesn't have to go attend a 5-day program or a 3-month program. We come to the leader, and it takes only 1 to 2 hours per month. And rest of the time, the leader is applying these things with his or her own team. So it's time and resource efficient. So all of you guys can count the average CTC in your company. So if it's 40 lakhs and they work 200 days, so it's costing you 20,000 INR per day just to send them to a training program without the cost of a training program. Yeah. So time and resource efficient, and individual coaching for relevant and specific areas. So you are not having a standard curriculum. I have a different curriculum, you have a different curriculum, and each leader has a different curriculum. And then the benefits cascade to the entire team. So think about it. If you as a leader go to your team members month after month and ask them, hey, what can I do to improve? Do you think that's going to impact them? Yeah. And remember, leaders cast a long shadow. So you'll develop more leaders under you by role modeling. And our 1 year engagement often costs less than sending a leader to a 5-day program at a reputed B school. You can fill in the blank. So you send them to a short-term program which doesn't do anything, or you can send them to us. And then we have in-between support between sessions, which is continuous access to the online platform, e-learning, habits, reflection, and tracking of their activities. So what did the leader do or didn't do, what they want to do, okay? And it's the largest leadership coaching network in the world, 3,000 coaches, 200 cities, 55 countries, and the same process that has been used with 150 of the Fortune 500 companies. Okay? And from startups to Fortune 500 with an effectiveness rate of 95%. So that's what the program that I gave you, the 8 steps, and that's what you can use yourself also. And as I said, the unique proposition that we offer is pay after you get results. If you don't get results, you don't have to pay us. How's that for a guarantee? And results, how do we measure? Not because we say that the leader has improved, not because the leader says he or she has improved, but anonymously, their team members say that the leader has improved. Yeah, so that's the guarantee. So before we wind up, this is the last slide. The session came with 100% satisfaction. If it didn't value, you can let me know and we'd be happy to refund. The PDF guide includes all the session notes and dozens of other resources. So there is one article which says how you develop organization-wide leadership plan. So you can use the template if you want. Blueprint of world's #1 leadership development program for your own use. And remember, one-on-one session with me to discuss your own leadership or leadership development initiatives in your organization. So I'm available for that, and the link is there in your PDF guide to my calendar, so you can schedule that session. And there are also some questions, so you can do your homework so that you can get the maximum out of the session. Okay, and as I used this quote before, CFO asks CEO, what happens if we invest in developing our people and then they leave? And CEO says, what happens if we don't invest in their development and then they stay? So even if you are a successful organization without leadership development, you probably are leaving money on the table. You pay them 100% of the salary to be 50% effective. Yeah. So we are going to go to 2 or 3 slides now. So first one is your feedback on what you thought. And second one is turning knowledge into actions. What are you going to apply? And finally, any question and answer you may have, I'd be happy to answer. And then obviously it's thank you.